You put your pronouns in, you take your pronouns out. You put your pronouns in and you shake them all about. Hola, yo soy Jordan, and this is a Spanish Quickie. Fast, easy Spanish lessons from somebody who speaks your language. I recently spent 6 minutes and 3 seconds telling you all about subject pronouns in Spanish and how to use them. I incorrectly called them personal pronouns. Oops. But now I'm gonna tell you, don't use them. Huh? Let me explain. To understand what I'm about to say, you really need to be familiar with the material in the infinitive and conjugation, personal pronouns, and the three enemigos. So if anything doesn't make sense to you today, go back and watch those lessons. Here are the subject pronouns in Spanish on a typical conjugation chart, formerly known as personal pronouns. And here's the present tense conjugation of ser. We learned to say I am, you would say yo soy. You are is tú eres, we are is nosotros somos, and so on. Take a look at those conjugations of ser. They're all unique. No two of them are the same. That's different from English. In English, the same chart looks like this. Notice R takes up 4 of the 6 spots. So right away, we know Spanish is very different from English in this way. This difference gives us one huge power in Spanish. We usually don't have to say the subject pronoun. Because each conjugation is unique, if that word is said, we know exactly which box it comes from and thus what subject pronoun is implied. For example, we are is nosotros somos. But do you see somos in any other box? No, you don't. So if you see or hear somos ever, anywhere, you know 100% that it comes from this box. And this box always is first person plural. Somos is exactly the same as nosotros somos. You don't have to say nosotros for them to know exactly who you're talking about. This is in direct contrast to English. If you saw or heard just are in English, you'd still have no idea what's going on. That could be you are, we are, you both are, or they are. See why this doesn't work in English, but it does work in Spanish? Just by looking at the conjugated form of the word, you can usually tell who or what the subject is. Let's go to another very familiar example. You've heard this a dozen times now. Hola, yo soy Jordan. That means hello, I am Jordan. But look at that word soy. That can only mean one thing and can only come from one box on this chart, and thus is first person singular. Since soy can't mean anything other than I am, I can just say soy Jordan instead of yo soy Jordan. So just from the conjugation, if you don't use the subject pronoun, the person you're talking to will usually know exactly who or what you're talking about. Notice I said usually. We can do this in Spanish because the subject's identity is not ambiguous. But the third person in Spanish does have a little ambiguity. The first person is always I or we. The second person is always you or you both. But the third person can be he, she, or it. So if the subject isn't clear, you should still use the subject pronoun for the third person. Don't worry about that too much. These cases are quite rare. If you think about it, we only use subject pronouns in the first place in English and Spanish when the subject is clear. You wouldn't say he is so nice unless the person you're talking to knows exactly who you're talking about. So the situations where subject pronouns are needed in the third person are rare. You're much more likely to have to add the proper noun to avoid confusion. For example, Bill is so nice. Bill being the proper noun. That's what they're called, right? Another time when you pretty much need to say the subject pronoun is situations where you would say in English, it's me or it's him. This works a little differently in Spanish. It's me in Spanish is soy yo, which translates literally to I am I. It's you would be eres tú, you are you. That was kind of weird for me at first. It probably will be for you too. But if you think about it, our way is kind of weirder. I mean, it's me, so we speak in the third person about the first person. At least in Spanish, they use the first person to speak about the first person. After you hear her say this a few times, you'll get used to it real fast. Okay, this is a really simple lesson, so I'll just tell you 3 important notes, then we'll get out of here. No homework today. But if you stay till the end of this video, I have something new for you I'm trying out. If you like it, let me know in the comments below and I'll do it more often. Important note number 1. You can still use the subject pronouns whenever you want. If I want to say, yo soy Jordan, I can do that. It just sounds kind of stupid. Just being honest here. It's just very redundant. At first, it's totally cool. Please don't beat yourself up if you use subject pronouns right out of the gate, but do work towards not using them. It's very common for we gringos, myself included still, to overuse subject pronouns because, well, it's crazy that you don't have to. I'm gonna pretty much stop using them in the lessons from here on out. I was just waiting to introduce you to the idea. Important note number 2. I said I'm pretty much gonna stop using them. Sometimes adding the subject pronoun when you don't need to is done to add emphasis. For example, if you're with a group of friends and you're talking about going on a trip to Spain, friend number 1 says, voy, I go. Friend number 2 says, voy también, I go too. But you have plans or don't want to go, you can say, yo no voy, I don't go. By adding the yo, you're saying I don't go instead of I don't go. You don't go in contrast with emphasis to them both who are going. Got it? Important note number 3. Usted and ustedes both add ambiguity into the situation, but I've avoided that subject in this video because I didn't want to muddy the waters. Today's video is about the idea of not using subject pronouns. In the video Formal Conjugation, I go over how usted and ustedes are different. Ambiguity is the bottom line here. Generally speaking, the ultimate rule that covers 100% of the situations is when there is no ambiguity as to who or what the subject is, you don't need to say the subject pronouns. If there's any ambiguity at all, you do. But don't sweat this too much. On one side, you might overuse subject pronouns. Who cares? On the other side, they might have to say who, as in who cares. If you're not already subscribed to the Gringo Español newsletter, why don't you head on over to gringoespanol.com/free updates and do that now. The link is also below this video. I send that newsletter out on a weekly basis with special videos, lessons, and tips that not everybody gets. That's gringoespanol.com/free updates. I will see you next time. Hasta luego. Adios, amigo. Hola, yo soy Jordan, and this is a Spanish quickie. Woo! Fast, easy Spanish lessons from somebody. Fuck you. Here we go. Man, my mouth is just not on today.